co-programmer along with pianist Gail Martin for the Houston Tuesday Musical Club. And I happened to meet Dr. John Cornelius II at a house concert and found out he was a composer. When I asked him, well, what do you compose? He said, well, you name it, I'll write it. So I thought this would be an especially interesting talk. We often have composers, but I don't know if we have any as versatile as Dr. John Cornelius in the past. So he has an amazing biography. This is a subset. He now has an updated one, which I printed out but forgot to bring. But he's a member of ASCAP, which serves all songwriters and composers. His works are garnering increasingly frequent performance throughout the United States. His output includes a number of chamber works, orchestral works, song cycles, and opera. Having been the music director, arranger, composer for a number of theaters, including the Great Caruso, the Ensemble Theater, Adventure Theater in Glen Echo Park, Main Street Theater, and Theater Under the Stars Humphrey School. He has also written along with his collaborator, Michael J. Bobbitt, several works for lyric theater, including Miranda and Brother Lynn, Say It Ain't So, The Yellow Rose of Texas, and his latest, which I'm sure is not the latest anymore, an adaptation of the Negro Baseball League classic, Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. He was featured at a number of Prelude festivals at the Kennedy Center and has received a commission from the Smithsonian Institute, Going the Distance, a children's musical about the lives and careers of Wilma Rudolph and Jesse Owens. Of his chamber works, Charles Ward in the Houston Chronicle wrote, the highlight was a set of 3 spirituals arranged for tenor and string orchestra by composer John Cornelius, and Oh Fix Me, the juxtaposition of an elegant long melody floating over a sharp jazzy string riff was electric. His most, I'm sure this is again not the most recent works, include Chanson Creole, a song cycle whose text is by Jean de Couleur of 19th century Louisiana. Look that up. Those are people of color who were free of French and African descent, is that correct? And sonata attitudes for 2 horns and piano. Dr. Cornelius is a native of Jackson, Mississippi, and receives his Doctor of Music and Composition from Rice University. And one thing I did before he came is I looked on YouTube and I found the same song sung by Kathleen Battle and then in a newer arrangement by John Cornelius. And it was amazing the difference. He had this sort of more classic version, and he had the more jazz-infused version. And it's Easton. What's her first name? Is it Denise?
Nicole Easton?
Nicole Easton, yes. It's a wonderful performance on YouTube of one of his arrangements. So I will give you Dr. John Cornelius.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to be here with you. So today, my little chat, if you will, is going to be focused on one particular topic, and it is influences of Methodist hymnody on my compositional career. That sounds like a rather heady topic, but I think you'll find a lot of fun with it. Yes, I am a PK. My father is a retired Methodist minister in Mississippi. I say retired in quotations because ministers never actually retire, they just switch pulpits. So I am what's known as a cradle Methodist, meaning that I was born into a Methodist family and we have long roots in the Methodist Church in Mississippi. In fact, my paternal great-grandfather was a circuit rider. For those of you who are not familiar with that term, he would literally saddle up on Sundays and go to various churches under his charge. And this was all through the piney woods of Mississippi. So when I say a cradle Methodist, I'm not kidding. So one of the things that I always enjoyed growing up was I loved the music. I loved the hymns in the church. It was always fun to listen to them. And I didn't realize it, but so many of them had a Gaelic influence, so meaning that they were pentatonic and they sounded very similar to a lot of the songs that I was hearing on the radio. And growing up in Mississippi, you basically either heard the blues or Elvis. That was pretty much it. And so listening to all that stuff as a kid growing up, it was very influential on me. And I never really forgot it. And every time I go home, it is a reminder of the musical influences that I had. So I want to talk a little bit about my earliest piano lessons because they were a little unusual. The reason I started piano lessons was my father, who was also a circuit preacher, but by then he was driving a car, but he was going up the Natchez Trace every Sunday, and he had two charges, one from a place called Carthage, Mississippi, and another in a town that I'm sure most of you have never heard of called Oklahoma. They're both in red clay country, and so everybody would know where we had been on Sundays. Our car was just covered. Anyway, he had one church and didn't have a pianist. They had a piano, but no one to play it. And I said, I was about 10. I said, okay, I'll play it. And he said, well, you can't play it. I said, so get me lessons. Well, little did he or I know that within 6 months I was literally playing for the church, and I've been playing ever since. Now, the beautiful thing about that was that I wound up with his youngest sister's piano teacher, little neighborhood piano teacher, and she was 80 when I was about 10. And I didn't know that it was unusual for people to start off by writing notes at their earliest music lessons. You know, I just kind of figured that was something that everybody did. And I would talk to my friends, they were going, wait, you're writing music? Really? I said, yeah, aren't you? And of course, it wasn't standard practice, but every week I would have to write something, even at my very first lesson. So I was writing and playing literally from the first lesson. That was very important to me, but the other piece that was really important is because she knew of my father's profession and the initial reason for me taking lessons, she insisted that I sight read a hymn a week. So every week it was something she would flip open a hymnal, okay, go. And so I started learning how to sight read very quickly, which was a good thing because, you know, I didn't know all those hymns as well as I do now, so I was literally sight reading services. But I was, what, 10 or 11, maybe 12 by then, and because of that, I just got really fast at sight reading because I had no choice. What also became important to me was, I'm going to flash forward a little bit to high school, where I was a part of a magnet arts program, and my teacher was a woman named Sandra Polanski, and she was a proud graduate of the W, as we call the Mississippi College for Women at the time. And she was very influential in teaching me how to hear. One of the most important things she ever said to me was, you know, if you're listening to American music, there's one word I like to use for it, and that word is spunk. It's got spunk. And if you're going to write music, find the spunk in it. And so I was very aware when I was listening to Bernstein and Gershwin and Ellington, but they just drive by, and it's just fascinating to me. And I was really captivated with that. But the other lesson that she imparted to me was, you know, I know that you're playing for your father's church, but when you're not playing, if you don't have to play on those Sundays, you should really practice your part singing when you're standing there singing the hymns. And so I started doing that, and I would drive my mother absolutely crazy because each verse I would switch parts. And she was standing next to me, and she was always singing the melody, and she would just kind of look at me and go, what are you doing? And, you know, it became a part of me. So that other aspect of it, really training my ear, training my eyes, became really important. A couple other things that I thought were really influential, and I really hope that somehow we can actually recapture this, but that was singing folk songs in school, singing patriotic songs, singing seasonal songs for winter and spring and summer and fall. Those kind of things are invaluable because they train your ear, but they also give you just a common body of music that everybody knows. And I find that as a teacher now, most of my incoming freshmen have no idea what patriotic songs sound like, and that's really unfortunate. We should know those songs, they're ours. We should know what those melodies sound like. The moment we hear them, we get them. But I also realize that, you know, growing up with Bugs Bunny, you heard these songs a lot. You know, you also heard operatic excerpts, you heard symphonic excerpts in those Looney Tunes, and the kids are just not getting it. I keep trying to sneak bits and pieces in to various lessons, and sometimes I'll go, what is that? And I actually do a music lit lesson on Looney Tunes. And of course, that leads them into, well, what is that? And what is that? And of course, I can just roll right into the canon of romantic music just from that, not just in opera. So those are really important parts of my musical background. I want to talk just a little bit about what I was doing in junior high. I had a friend who was taking trumpet with me as well. I was in 6th and 7th grade band, and we started writing songs together when we weren't practicing. And so by the time I left junior high, we'd written over 300 songs together. I can't remember a single one. I got the lyrics in a notebook somewhere, but I was just starting to write songs. And when I got to high school and then later college, my teachers there started interesting me in spirituals and that genre. And so I've got all that stuff just kind of swirling around me all at once. And I was just absorbing everything because no one said don't do it. In fact, they were encouraging me, go for it, try it. If it doesn't work, it may not be time for it, but try it anyway. So just to give you a sense of where my musical tastes lie, I'm just going to list a few of the melodies that I like. Mon cours sera te voir, If I Only Had a Brain, Gretchen on Spinrod, E Luceva di Stelle, Dove Sono, Were Thine That Special Face, Guess Who I Saw Today? There's a Brazilian samba called E Luxo Sol, which is recorded by Rosa Passos, great tune. He's a Tramp, remember the old Peggy Lee tune? Count Your Blessings Instead of Sheep. The Second Star to the Right. Been So Long. Paying the Cost to Be the Boss, an old B.B. King tune. A little known blues number that Aretha Franklin recorded called Muddy Water. How about The Solid Rock? Blessed Assurance, Just As I Am. And the very first hymn that I actually remember, and I think I was about 2.5 or 3 when it really caught my attention, was Holy, Holy, Holy. And I'll tell you why I was so fascinated with that piece. I was very small, and where we sat in church, I couldn't see the top of the piano, but I could see the pianist playing. And I was fascinated because her fingers would push the keys down, and I would see these little white blocks disappear, then they would reappear. And that was fascinating to me, and so I was always aware of that. And so one day I remember I was maybe 3 or 4, and I was singing Holy, Holy, Holy around the house, and my grandmother was saying, I didn't know you could sing. I didn't either. And then right after that, I stopped singing for a long time because I had cousins who were teasing me, so I just said, we're not gonna do that for a while. But I'm gonna play a little piece for you now, and this is from one of the musicals that I've written called The Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. It's about a fictitious Negro League baseball team. But the reason I want to play it is because I find that melodically, it is reminiscent of a lot of the pieces that I grew up listening to, in the sense that it is pentatonic, but that is as far as extension goes, because phrasing is irregular. A lot of the chord progressions are built on mediant relationships, so it's going in a slightly different direction where just when you think you know where it's going, it takes a turn. And I love that element of surprise when I'm writing. So if I find that I'm doing something I haven't done before, I get really excited. So I'm going to play this for you. The piece is called Long, Long Line, and it is a duet that becomes an ensemble number between Bingo, who is the leader of the team, and a novice player who is getting frustrated because it's not working out the way he thought it would. It was not matching his dreams and expectations.
Is this all I've got to expect? What's the point? What's the point? So we come from a long, long line of travelers. The lessons they taught we carry inside. They got no glory, but they passed on their pride.
here in Houston on my desktop. And then I streamed them to a recording studio in Boston, and then flew up and recorded the vocals with singers from the Boston area. Why Boston? Because that's where my collaborator lives now. So he was able to gather all the singers, and I just did all the orchestrations here in Houston. And we are, at this point, planning to do a 29-hour reading of the show in New York in April. So we'll see what happens. We're looking for producers. Anybody got any rich friends? So that's happening. Also, a couple of pieces of mine are being revived in February 9th at Zilka Hall. The Urban Souls Dance Company is representing a dance piece that I wrote for them called Colored Carnegie, about the first library for African Americans here in Houston. It was right next to the Colored High School, which is now all underneath the Pierce Elevator. Anyway, the dance piece is about the creation of that library and how they were about getting funding from Andrew Carnegie for the building of the said library. And it's a really interesting piece. So that's happening. In the following week, at the Holocaust Museum, the Apollo Chamber Players are playing a piece that I wrote for them called Pox. And of course, that's Latin for peace. And the piece was actually written using contemporary poetry, which is spoken by Houston's outgoing poet laureate, Emmanuel Bean, and texts and poems that were written by Langston Hughes within weeks of VE Day. And he was talking about the ways in which we would use peace, and the ways we maintain peace, and the ways we protect peace. And so that's what the piece is about. And we just did a Carnegie Hall performance of it last March, and so I'm always happy to do it again, so bring it on. Okay, so I want to close out by doing a little tribute to my earliest piano teacher. Her name was Ethel Alice Woods, my favorite, that neighborhood piano teacher that everybody should have. And she was the one who really taught me how to play hymns and play spirituals. And so I'm going to play a couple of arrangements of hymns and spirituals that I have done now that I am a working adult, and I am composer in residence for First Presbyterian Church of Kingwood. So I write these pieces sometimes as service music, sometimes for offertories, sometimes as preludes, sometimes as postludes. But the thing that I like the most is I'm really happy when people go, oh, I love that hymn, which means that tells me that no matter what I've done, I've managed to preserve that original melodic source material, which is really important. I don't want to get so caught up in what I'm doing that I lose that original source. It's one of the ways I think I can communicate with listeners so that they have something to recognize. Okay, so what I'm going to play is Abide With Me, and I'm going to also play, if we have time, I may play Go Down Moses, and then I'll finish up with Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, which is one of those old war horses. And in the Methodist Church out in the country, we would call that marching music, because everybody would walk around to the collection plate and have to give them something to get going with. So here's Abide With Me first. may have mentioned today, or something that I played? Yes?
I started arranging music for just hymns for solo flute, and I get to this point, I come back the next day and I think, well, that's the dumbest thing I ever wrote. So how do you know when you are satisfied with what you've done?
That's a very interesting question. Sometimes you are continually editing. It happens. And there are other times when I will come up with an idea and realize that I'm not ready to work with that idea just now. And so I may have to put it aside for a while and come back to it later. When do I really feel like it's finished? When it feels like I have made a statement and I've said what I needed to say and I didn't go on too long. I love brevity. I don't have anything against Herman Melville, but I mean, come on. Yeah, I read Moby Dick in the 10th grade, and I refused to read it ever again in life. It was just too many digressions. But to answer your question, I'm mindful of the amount of time it takes to develop an idea, and also for the listener to absorb an idea. And I just want to be mindful, depending on where the audience is, and knowing who I'm writing for and for the occasion. Those are things that I want to bear in mind, but they're not dictating what I write. Above all, I just rely on my own taste. What do I want to hear? And that actually helps quite a bit. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.